Welcome. In the next few minutes, we're going to transform the confusing world of AI jargon into something you can actually understand.
If you've ever felt like you need a translator just to read the tech headlines, you're definitely in the right place. Okay, let's dive into this. First things first, what are we even talking about here? We hear the term generative AI everywhere, but what does generative actually mean? To put it simply, it's not just about analyzing information that's already out there. No, this is about creating something brand new. It learns all the patterns from data it's seen, and then it uses that knowledge to generate something totally original.
And you've definitely seen this technology in action. It's the magic behind tools that can create new text, generate these stunningly realistic images, compose music, write code, the list just goes on and on.
So the big question is, how does a machine get so, creative? To really understand that, we need to peek inside the AI's brain, so to speak, and look at the fundamental building blocks. Okay, so it kind of builds up in layers. At the foundation, you have deep learning. That's the whole method, inspired by how our own brains work. Within that, you have transformers. This is the specific architecture, the engine, that uses a really cool self-attention mechanism to figure out which words are most important in a sentence. And the result of all that? A large language model, or LLM, a massive model trained on just a mind-boggling amount of text.
All right, so we have the AI's brain. But an empty brain isn't very useful, is it? It needs to go to school. So how does an AI actually learn all this stuff?
Well, think of it like this. First, there's unsupervised learning. This is like getting a general university degree. The AI just reads pretty much the entire internet, books, articles, websites, the whole shebang, to learn patterns on its own. But then you can do fine-tuning. This is like sending it to medical school for a specialty. You give it a smaller, very specific data set to study so it can become an expert on one particular task. And then there's this other super important technique called reinforcement learning with human feedback, or RLHF. Think of this as giving the AI a personal coach. Humans will rate the AI's answers, rewarding the good ones. This process is absolutely crucial for teaching the model to be more helpful and aligned with what we actually want. Okay, so our AI is trained, it's educated, it's ready to go. How do we actually, talk to it? How do we get it to do what we want? Well, it all comes down to how you ask. And that brings us to something called prompt engineering. This is a huge deal. Because really, the quality of the answer you get from an AI almost always depends on the quality of the question you ask. It's both an art and a science, figuring out how to design and tweak your prompts to get the absolute best output. And you can get incredibly creative with this stuff. You can use a chain of thought prompt that asks the model to literally think step by step. Or you could try a chain of emotion to get a more emotionally resonant response. There's even chain of numerical reasoning for math problems. Each one is like a different way of talking to the AI to get it to think in a specific way. But what if you want the AI to know about your data? Stuff that's not on the public internet? Well, that's where a technique called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG for short, comes in. It's a total game changer. Basically, you ask a question, the system first retrieves the relevant info from your own knowledge base, and then it uses that info to give you a precise, informed answer. Finally, it's important to remember that these big models don't just exist on their own, in a vacuum. There's a whole ecosystem of tools and principles that developers use to actually bring them to life. Let's talk about some of the key tools. You've got Hugging Face, which is kind of like a giant public library and workshop for AI models. Then there's LangChain, which is like the plumbing that connects these models to your own data and other tools. And you have LLMOps, which is the rulebook of best practices for making sure these things run reliably out in the real world. And maybe the most important tool in the entire toolkit is this idea of responsible AI. As this technology gets more powerful, making sure we're building and using it in a way that's safe, trustworthy, and ethical, well, that isn't an afterthought. It's absolutely essential. So, there you have it. We've unpacked the core concepts, from the AI's brain to the way it learns and communicates. All that jargon isn't a barrier anymore, it's a gateway. So now that you speak the language of AI, the only question left is, what conversation will you start?